When I spoke at the first service, I was reminded of something, and then I was reminded of something again, which makes the first thing I thought of to me humorous. I first gave a talk here about 10 years ago, and when I did that, I was an absolute newbie at talking at churches, and really did not know what to expect, and was a researcher at a medical school. And the warmth and the welcome that I got here was both very affirming and gave me a sense of hopefulness as I went forward and continued to talk at many churches. And for that, I thank you. But the humorous piece was, as I was remembering again, when I was speaking here that first time, I had never done like 3 church services. And I felt like I was in a scene from Groundhog Day. You know, like, is this going to last through eternity? That they're just going to keep on bringing new people in? And so I got a hit of that as I was walking back in, like, oh my God, there's more people. So now, and I know the topic is intuition, so you'd think that I would have at least remembered, like, the heck with intuition. So there's humor in everything. You know, it's another really, to me, quite interesting and a little spooky was, I remember when I spoke to Nell on the phone months ago about what it was that the topic area here was. I mean, I always talk about forgiveness, but I blend it in with whatever is, you know, I'm supposed to be. And I was driving here, and I kind of knew that I'd have to come up with something, because I didn't remember what the topic was, because I give a lot of talks. I wasn't anxious about it. You know, it's like, all right, you know, Fred, you've given lots of talks, and they won't know. You know what I'm saying? But here's what's spooky, and this is a little, I mean, it's wonderful and it's spooky. I usually make phone calls on drives of this length, and I'm usually yakking to somebody, and I didn't make one phone call. I listened to an hour CD on intuition. Is that weird? Like, without even knowing or even thinking, I have a stack of CDs like this. I pulled out one that was the only thing I listened to was on intuition, and then I come here and see for this month the topic is intuition, and I'm thinking, wow, okay. So not only am I compelled to repeat the same thing, but somebody's following me. Let me tell you just a forgiveness piece, and then I'll link this to something. We're doing work now in Sierra Leone. That is where that project that was just referred to, the Northern Ireland Hope Project. We're working with teachers, in particular, at orphanages and at schools, to teach them to heal from the horror of the Civil War. And then we're developing a curriculum for them to teach to children so that they don't have to carry the scars of that war forward. Okay? And I bring that up because most of us have the luxury of never having to touch anything even close to a civil war and that kind of brutality. And yet we still carry our wounds forward. And I think to myself all the time, with the affluence and the luxury and the goodness that we as Americans, and in particular those of us lucky enough to live in Northern California, if we won't heal, who will? And I mean that with myself as well. But with all that I have and all the opportunity that I've been given, if out of my mouth comes unkindness, and if out of my mouth comes the continuation of grudges, where in this world will it ever be possible for peace? And no, I'm not, I mean, it's just, but it's a profound question that troubles me. You know, and when I think of the topic of intuition, I think, well, what does that mean? Like, what is it that we're looking for inside of us to help us move either as individuals or as a species? Like, what, in some level, what are we waiting for? And what is it that we're doing that drowns out that intuitive voice of goodness? Like, at some level, we can all understand that, you know, if your parents were murdered at gunpoint by a 10-year-old wielding a submachine gun, you might have some reason to be harsh. And we understand at some level that if your culture is so hate-filled or has a war against another culture, that yes, there might be some reason that you don't, like, open your heart. But we do it here. I mean, you live in a red state, and you hold that as a point of pride that you're not a blue state. Or you live in the San Francisco Bay Area, and you hold it as a point of pride that you don't like George Bush. But the tone and the righteousness and the harshness are exactly the same. And I think to myself, why? Like, what are we doing? Like, what am I doing? What are we doing? And why is it, and again, this is, why is it that that intuitive voice of, you know, Fred, George Bush is as much a human being as you are. Why is that voice not louder for us? And that little tiny, tiny voice that says, you know it's happening in another part of the world, but don't condemn them until you're healed. You know, don't be the one to cast that first stone, and yet we're all casting away. You know, we're like throwing stones like it's target practice. And so I think how linked that intuitive voice of goodness that whispers in us all the time. Fred, you don't have to say that. Fred, you can let them be wrong. Fred, it's just not that big a deal. Or Fred, you make the first step to be nice, to be kind, to be gracious. You just do it. And every one of you has that voice all the time. That reaching out of spirit to communicate with us through a quieter, non-personal, non-ego exhortation, which is what your intuition is. It's spirit trying to communicate alongside of your ego. You know, your ego's still there because your ego has to listen to the communication. There's got to be somebody home to say, oh, the phone's ringing, right? But most of us have somehow tuned out that entirely gracious, selfless, loving voice, which tells you all the time in the smallest of ways to listen. The smallest of ways. It's not telling you that you have to invent a cure for cancer. It's telling you you need to stay on the phone for 45 seconds without getting upset with your mother. That's what it's telling you. That's what it's saying. It's saying that when your kid does something wrong, even if your parents didn't model good parenting, it is your profound responsibility to do it no matter what happened to you. That's your intuitive voice. It is that voice when a friend is late or fails at something or doesn't act the way you think they should. It's that voice that tries to get you to breathe so you don't have to be harsh in response. It's that absolute, quiet, centered, gentle place where we have somehow convinced ourselves that the world is so dangerous and that people just don't have enough love for me, that voice is a nuisance. And that I have to be like everyone else, clutching and grabbing and arguing and fighting for what's mine, even if I trample people. And what has come to me as a forgiveness teacher over all these years is a very simple thing. You get what you practice. You know, so if you practice listening to, you know, how would Spirit talk to me? I mean, Spirit's not going to talk to me to be a good piano player. It's wasting its time. It's not. You know, the joke, you know, that I can carry a tune to the graveyard and then I bury it. You know, it's like, I have almost no musical talent. So Spirit's not talking to me about that. It might be talking to me, but it's certainly got better audiences. But Spirit talks to me to do this. But it also talks to me to be respectful. And when I'm speaking to, you know, my wife, to be kind. Spirit's going to talk to every one of you also, all the time. But it's not going to necessarily like those reincarnation jokes where, you know, everybody finds out that they were the Queen, you know, the Queen of Scotland. You know, it's not so. Almost all of us have normal lives where Spirit wants us to listen to it through the smallest act. The smallest act of, you know, are you bored with what you're doing? Well, last 10 seconds longer. Or are you tempted to not pay attention to your partner because you had a bad day, even though your partner may have had a worse day? What Spirit is saying is pay attention. That's all it's saying. It's saying get over yourself. That's really, I believe that that's Spirit's only message at some level. You know, get over yourself and join the program. No, I mean, and I remember Ram Dass's like really cogent line about that, where he said that there's two beings left in this universe. What's left of my ego and God. I mean, that was his. But that is the function and the purpose of our intuition. It's to translate downward the loving injunction that is omnipresent, endless, which is Spirit. Just Spirit's loving injunction is just love. And it gets translated through our particular intuitive faculty, which is limited, into some things that we can actually do. You know, rather than keeping it airy-fairy or, you know, too big. It's, you can wait online at Safeway, even if there are 3 people ahead of you, without getting tense. You can do that. I know this is like science fiction, but you can do that. Or when you're on 101, it's okay that somebody gets ahead of you. This is true. I mean, I know you maybe will film it and show it so that people can believe that this is possible. Or that you can be on the express line at a supermarket and have somebody there ahead of you with 11 items instead of 10 and not have to have a nuclear explosion in your brain. But if you understand that that's what intuition is, then you can learn to follow it simply because it's not in opposition to your will. But it catalyzes your will and it responds to your will. So if you wake up and say, well, during this day, what would be 5 things that I could do just to help? Doesn't matter who, doesn't matter what. And then you wait till the intuitive voice whispers, well, here's one. The thing is that intuitive voice will start whispering instantly and not stop. But we can limit it to 5 things. Because that intuitive voice is going all the time, just telling you to be loving and kind, and it doesn't matter who the object is. But let's say you at least want to limit it to 5 people during the day. So help me to listen to when it would be appropriate. It's not going to let you win the lottery necessarily. And you remember that wonderful movie where, you know, the guy is God and he's getting all these phone calls, you know, the messages, where everybody wants to win the lottery. But it will allow you to be a little better as a human being on a regular basis. And it is that voice that I believe we shut off at our peril. And all of us shut it off. We make it too much about me. We make our needs and our desires too important. And we don't pay enough attention to the suffering right around us. Who can I help? Where can I do nothing more than just zipper this? That would be a big, the intuition is telling you to do that a lot. That one I can guarantee. Well, it's screaming that at me, but I'm a public speaker. So Fred, put a lid on it. But if you just looked at something as simple as that, like where would be a perfect opportunity for me to say nothing as an offering? There'd be lots of them. Or where would be a perfect opportunity to say just a little bit of kindness? There'd be lots of them. And when we don't do that, we end up in unforgiveness. You know, because we end up holding the negativity. We end up holding the desire to punish or mistreat or give a harsh word in response. We end up owning that through every cell in our body. And it ends up harming us. You know, what our research has shown is forgiveness is good for you. This is not that complicated. Or gratitude is good for you. Or kindness is good for you. Or hope is good for you. The research has shown these things. Well, the practice piece is an intention, and the intuition is the channel that lets you know when to practice. You know, you have to decide that I want to be more grateful. Okay, well then your mind will tune in to the gratitude everywhere and let you know when to say to somebody, thank you. Or let you know when to turn to your husband and wife and say, you know, I'm not sure I have fully honored all that you are to me. And I would be nowhere without you. So thank you from the absolute depths of my heart. Thank you. This is our link, the intuitive piece, and the virtues, so to speak, the forgiveness, the gratitude, the compassion, the empathy, the tolerance. Those are all manifestations of it. You know, I teach one of them. But they're all healthful. They're all good for body and mind. They're all good for relationship. We just have to choose to tune in. And the good news, or at least from what I see, is that when we make the intention that spirit or whatever the force is that is always available to instruct us as to where and when shows up. It says, here I am. Right there would be a good person for you to go give a kind word to. Or right there would be a wonderful person to offer to help. Or right there would be a moment where you just say nothing. And go home, lick your wounds, take care of yourself, but don't add any more suffering to this planet. And so what I'm just trying to picture, and this is where I'll close this, is this image that I have of this like omnipresent broadcasting system of spirit, which is just, be nice everybody. You're on this planet together, spinning through space, play nice. And then there's us each of us eager to get as much as we can out of this life and making secondary interest everybody else. And you got that broadcasting system and our meanness, M-E, and that the intuition's the conduit between. You know, how do you listen to get beyond, it's just me, it's just about me, it's just what happens to me, let me tell you about me, you know, the conversations that we like. You know, hi, I'm Fred, let me tell you about me. The way out is that just gentle voice, which if you make an intention, you will hear. Thank you.